Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm AtF Fanatic, and today we're taking a look at Iconoclash, a tactical skirmish and hand management game by Strange Machine Games. I played a lot of Smash Brothers, especially Melee, during my high school years, so it's only natural that I would want to take a look at this title inspired by platform fighters. Without any further ado, let's dive in. In Iconoclash, 2 to 4 players will move about a map of platforms, move around to get into position to grab items, dodge stage hazards, and attack their foes in the most effective manner. To set up, start by choosing the map you'll be playing on. Each set comes with its own board, and those from larger sets are double-sided. Take the 16 card deck that matches the map you've chosen and shuffle them up. Now shuffle the item cards. Each set has its own, but feel free to mix and match them as you see fit, or just use all of them if you have more than one set. Make sure the D4, D6, and tokens are within easy reach of all players. Next, each player should choose a fighter. Each large box comes with 4 characters. These 4 come from the Castle Clash set, which I'll be using to teach. Each fighter comes with a reference card to remind you of the basics, an overview sheet that covers your character specifically, a wooden meeple to track their position on the map, and 21 cards. Take the card with the red border. This is your character's basic card. Shuffle up the rest and then draw 6. Set your HP to 25 for a last man standing battle. I'll discuss alternate game modes at the end. For most characters, that's all you'll need to do. If you're playing with Kadath, be sure to keep your trap tokens nearby. If you're playing as Diane, make sure the Aegis cards all start face down in front of you. And if you're playing with Callie or the Valiant Knight, take all of your tokens and mix them up inside of your drawstring bag. In a 1v1, give the second player a power token to start. If playing with 3 or 4 players, the first player discards 3 cards, the second player discards 2, the third player discards 1, and both the third and fourth players start with 1 power token each. And with that, you're ready to begin. Each player's turn consists of 3 phases, starting with the Upkeep phase. You'll begin by drawing 2 movement tokens and adding them to your available pool. After that, draw a card from the environment deck and place it face up in front of you. On future turns, this will replace the card that is currently in front of you. In this case, Conquistador is drawn Angelic Light. It tells us to roll a d6 to determine where on the board it'll affect. In this case, we rolled a 4, so we'll place a token above the appropriate column to remind players that if they end their turn in said column, they'll get to collect a power token. There are likewise red tokens to remind players of negative effects. Some maps may have more positive or negative effects than others, but all of them can spawn item tokens. We then move on to the combat phase, where the main meat of the game takes place. During your combat phase, you'll get to take 2 actions. Additionally, anytime before, between, or after those actions, you may spend movement tokens one at a time to move 1 space each. This movement can be orthogonal or diagonal, and can move through the thin platforms you see that exist between spaces. In this case, Conquistador spends both of his starting tokens to move 2 spaces, placing him right next to Lilac. For his first action, the Conquistador decides to play Otter Destruction. We can see that it's an attack by the sword icon on the left side of the card. It has a base value of 1 damage and 0 launch, represented by the red sword and blue knockback symbols. Since it doesn't specify a range, he must be orthogonally adjacent to his target in order to use it. As he plays the card, he specifies one of the card's 3 effects to use. His options in this case are to randomly place an item token and gain 3 launch, to deal 3 extra damage if he drew an item card earlier in the turn, or to spend a power token to deal up to 6 extra damage. Since he hasn't drawn any items this turn, and has no power tokens yet, he'll use the top effect. To randomly place an item, he rolls both dice to give coordinates as to where to place the token. In this case, 2 and 4, so we'll place an item crate at the appropriate location. I'll explain how items work in a moment, but for now, let's finish this attack. After playing an attack card, the target of the attack may choose to play a shield card, once again denoted by the shield symbol on the left side. In this case, Lilac decides to respond with her Seraphim Shield. Like attacks, shield cards have 3 options you can choose from, each of which you'll want to make use of in different situations. Lilac decides to go with the better option, which doesn't do anything to prevent the attack, but does give her a power token to use later. We then resolve the rest of Conquistador's attack, which will deal 1 damage to Lilac. After that, he has the option of launching her, which forcibly moves her in a straight line along any of the orthogonals or 4 main diagonals. In this case, he decides to launch her to the left, which knocks Lilac to the edge of the map. Conquistador still has an action left. He wants to grab that item token, so he decides to take his basic card, Grabby Paws, and discards it to gain a number of movement tokens equal to its boost value as listed in the bottom left corner. He then immediately spends those tokens to move on to the item crate that spawned. During your turn, and only on your own turn, if you're on a space with an item crate, you'll immediately remove the token from the map and draw an item card from the deck. Some are attacks and some are shields, but all are used in the same manner as your own cards. The only difference is that they get discarded to a separate pile for items rather than going to your own discard pile after being used. Before we move to the cleanup phase, it is important to note that there is a third type of action you may encounter. If you have no cards in your hand and still have actions remaining, you'll take 1 damage and draw a card for your action. You cannot opt to do this willingly, you may only do it if you run out of cards. Next, we come to the cleanup phase. Since the Conquistador did end his turn under the Angelic Light, he'll gain 1 power token to use later. After that, since his basic card is in his discard, he now returns it to his hand. Because of this, you'll always have your basic card back in your hand at the end of your turn. After that, Conquistador will draw 2 new cards from his deck. And finally, if the current player has more than 5 movement tokens or more than 8 cards in their hand, counting items but not including their basic card, they must discard down. Fortunately for the Conquistador, he doesn't go over either of those limits at the moment. After that, it's now Lilac's turn. As before, she'll draw 2 movement tokens and then an environment card. Said environment card starts with Everything Drops. When this happens, all fighters and item tokens will move downwards until they hit solid ground. However, since Lilac is currently hovering off the side of the stage, she instead falls off the map. When a player is edged off the map, they immediately take 2 damage. Since Lilac has plenty of health left, she'll immediately respawn at one of the open spawn points. Since Conquistador is in the top one, she can't go there, but all the others are fair game. She chooses the rightmost spot this time, since the next part of the environment card says to spawn an item crate just next to that space. She's taken a few hits in Conquistador's opening turn, but she now has 2 power tokens which she can spend to empower her cards. Furthermore, she begins by moving to pick up that crate, giving her the Frost Axe. Although the Conquistador is drawn first blood, the Angelic Princess has many options for a counterattack, and it could be anyone's game at this point. Players will continue taking turns back and forth like this until one player reaches 0 HP, at which point the survivor is the winner.
And those are the basic rules for how to play. The instructions also include rules for both Battle Royale and Team Play modes. If you're playing with 3 or 4 players, I do suggest using the Battle Royale rules. In this mode, you'll start your dial at 0 and everyone gets 1 power token. No one discards cards at the beginning of the game, and this time, instead of counting down your health, you're counting up how much damage you do with your dial. If at any point you damage yourself or otherwise take damage that isn't attributable to another player, then you'll instead lose those as points. Whoever has the highest score after 4 rounds is the winner.
With 14 characters in total, I haven't had a chance to try everything in the game yet. I've only played with about half of the characters thus far, but I'm loving the variety that's in here. For those who love running around and grabbing items, the Conquistador should be your first choice. He can force more items to spawn on the board at random, and is also able to make better use of those item cards. Dex Aplenty brings with him a number of cards from Millennium Blades, which you may recall I featured as last year's anniversary review. Unlike other characters, every single card in his deck is unique, and he makes a lot of use of power tokens, not only being able to gain them more easily, but also having cards that spend 2 or 3 at a time, whereas most characters can only use 1 token per card. Diane travels alongside her team of robots, including some from the upcoming Aegis Season 2. She starts out fairly weak, but gains permanent bonuses as the match goes on, eventually allowing her to unleash the powerful Ender Gon Shah. Though perhaps my favorite character that I've played thus far is Monarch. Being inspired by platform fighters, it should come as little surprise that there's a lot of aerial action in Iconoclash, and Monarch often gains bonuses when attacking a foe that's directly below her. There is so much in here, and I can't wait to try some of the others. I'm especially looking forward to giving Valiant Knight a try with his Push Your Luck minigame. Component-wise, the game is quite solid. The cards are of decent thickness and have a smooth finish. Each unique card has its own art, meaning there's quite a bit of variety for each character. It should be noted for the crossover characters that they often reuse art from their own games. This isn't something I personally care about, but I realize that others do look down on such practices. Each character has their own cardboard spitter and wooden meeples with a ladder shaped to them. These things are fairly large, but considering the size of the battlefields, it works quite well.
Each fighter also comes with a tuck box to keep everything stored in it and has plenty of extra room for those who want to sleeve their cards. Tokens are of decent thickness, and I have a ton of extras because I have all 4 sets. However, here's where we come to the difference between the 4 fighter sets and the lone 2 fighter set. In the 4 fighter sets, you have tuck boxes for the item and stage cards, but Cross Dimension Zero lacks these boxes. But a much bigger difference is the fact that, whereas the large sets have a double-sided board, CD0 instead comes with the map printed on paper. Now mind you, it's not plain paper, it's more like the sort that they use for professional posters, but all the same, it's still not a proper board. This was not something I expected from the Kickstarter, and is easily my biggest disappointment with the game. Though on the note of things that were unexpected, I do have to praise the drawstring bags that came with Callie and the Valiant Knight. These are absolutely top-notch quality. The images aren't merely printed on, so they should last a good long time. All in all, Iconoclash is a game that knows what it wants to do and does it quite well. It knows its inspiration, it knows its audience, and it knows the strengths and weaknesses of the tabletop design space. Every character plays unique, and some of them have wildly different gimmicks from one another. If you want to keep things more basic, stick with the Iconoclash set. It's the simplest of them. But if you want to see some of the crazier things you can do with the game, you might want to dive straight in with Battlegrounds. The basic rules are quite simple, but each character brings a lot of variety to the game with their own unique moveset. The art is great, and outside of my aforementioned complaints with the Cross Dimension Zero set, the components are excellent. As I said when previewing it, what BattleCon and Exceed do for Street Fighter, Iconoclash does for Super Smash Bros. It's an exciting, fast-paced game with plenty of tactical depth. In conclusion, I find Iconoclash to be worthy of a respectable 8.9 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Iconoclash, my first suggestion, as always, is to check with your friendly local game store to see if they can get it in stock. If you're unable to find it, or simply wish to learn more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Iconoclash? What board games would you like to see them do crossovers with? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.